welcome back to a very long break from the ADH Dads. I'm your host, CJ.
I'm JJ.
And boy, it's been a couple of weeks, I guess. We're just talking about that, bud, huh?
Yeah. Last time we published an episode, it was with Sanjay way back when. He's probably put out a couple movies since then. So yeah,
Yeah.
we've had a little bit of a break, but I think we could give a little bit of insight as to why we had a lot going on in our lives. Both of us have been kind of keeping pretty busy. I know that, and there's a lot of change taking place, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, it's we got hit with some whirlwind news over here. My father-in-law passed away very abruptly over these last couple of weeks here. So it was a very quick turnaround, 6-week diagnosis to lung cancer that had spread into his back and into his kidney and into his brain. And yeah, by the time we got diagnosed, it was 6 weeks until he had passed. So very quick, and a lot of time needed to be dedicated to family and getting things in order, and all the emotional support that was going on. So it was very tough around here, and it was our first time really talking about death with the kids too a lot. So having to show up for them. So yeah, man, you never know, you just here one day and gone the next. Just God bless and be thankful, and let the people that that are close to you, that you love them, because it does happen quick. So
Yeah, so sorry for you guys' loss. Yeah, it's really difficult, and it actually, it makes me think of what you just said at the end there. It makes me think of something I saw just the other day, and it simply said, get get home after work. Don't spend more time at work. Take the time off to be at your kids'
yeah.
games. Just that the life that you live is, it's got a time. It's got a timeline that you aren't aware of exactly, and we all know that it comes to at some point an end. So do we really want to spend that, sitting at the desk, or do we want to try and spend more time, cheering on our kids and just kind of getting more hugs and stuff? I mean, I believe that's why we try to go to the office. It's not necessarily to, get in as many hours as possible at the office, but hopefully to get the quality life that we want outside of it. That's kind of the goal. And so
Yeah.
when we experience something, especially like such a sudden loss like that, it becomes that much more apparent. But I think it should be apparent always. Be mindful, and take that time to really cherish, because I think I said to the special woman I've been dating for a bit of time here now. I was presented with the opportunity to either go get my kiddo because his mom was feeling ill, or spend time with her, and that was a dilemma for me, because both of them are opportunities for quality time. And one thing too is I as a co-parent, I get to see my son, roughly 50% of his days. So that means everything matters. Every minute counts, and not that it wouldn't if I had him every day, but it's just even more obvious to me that that time is only available so much. And and then throughout the days of the week when he's in school, I get him from school aftercare after I'm done working, and I've got like 3 hours with him, and then I put him to bed. So the majority of his day is either sleeping or not with me. So our time with our kids and our time with our loved ones is, it's very minimal compared to the amount of time we spent doing other things. So let's pursue the time that we can with them as much as possible.
Yeah, and it's just sad, he was a truck driver, so he was gone a lot of time, really was making some choices here later in his life to really try to step away from work and spend time with family. We just had planned a trip to go to Hawaii. He was going to take the grandkids up and have a grandparent trip with our kiddos here. And we paid for that whole trip, and just days later, this diagnosis happened. So it's just a shame. You never know what you're planning, and yeah, time is precious. Time is short. It's the most valuable resource I think that we can give of ourselves. Is our time. So
My
Be
my
intentional
mother,
with it.
yeah, my mother, years back, her mother passed away, and this is a mother of 9 kids, and their father died when my mom was young, and after my grandmother passed away, my mother received a certain amount from her estate, and she had this idea, like, I want to spend time with the family using this, so I want to take them on vacation. I kind of wonder, never really asked her, like, what does that look like, because I know this is a decision based on a loss in some ways, and there's probably that feeling of needing to make these connections, make these relationships, you know uh thrive, and really create another set of memories, because we know our time is limited. I'm curious because, yeah, just like you guys experienced recently, that stuff comes to the front of the mind more so when we're facing it. But what do we do
Yeah,
to just take advantage of today? That's the tricky part, because our stresses of the daily life come back into play. Our kids still fight, and we have to deal with that. And when we're dealing with their arguments and their bickering and hitting each other, we're usually not thinking, okay, how can I really take in the time that I have with
yeah,
them. Instead, we're just playing some sort of damage control, and trying to regulate the
yeah,
situation. But gosh, even still, like, we think about it after the fact, maybe a few weeks later, and we kind of chuckle, because we find certain things that we know about our loved ones in those moments, and we can laugh about it later. Well, how do we translate into the moment to make make a difficult moment something special like that? That's something I think that just comes to the front of our mind when we're facing the reality of life and
Well,
the
I
loss
was just
in
going to
life.
say, brother, nothing has been more of a piece of humble perspective pie than having death at the forefront, in our family. Um, you know, though these kids are wild and it gets messy and it's a ruckus, on most days, I'm just extremely grateful that I get to be a part of it. And, death is funny because it's something that we don't want to think about. We don't want to talk about in a daily conversation, until it's at the forefront of our mind. And then we have these big, grieving, traumatic moments because we feel so ill prepared to talk about it, to think about it, to experience it, and to go through it. And there's a beautiful poetic irony to it, I often talk about that poetic irony of life, but I mean, it was really wonderful. That's that seems like such a weird word to use during this time, but it felt like oh god, my head is all over the place of how I want to tell this story. I guess I'll just go back to the beginning, where our middle, it was crazy kind of seeing how death affects, our neurodivergent child versus our neurotypical child, and it was total opposite ends of the spectrum, where neurodivergent said, I don't understand why I should be sad, you know, or I don't get it. We only knew Grandpa Harold for a couple of years. This was my wife's stepfather. It's a new marriage, happened so quickly. And where our middle child, who we're pretty sure is an empath, she's like on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. She just soaks up the emotional, temperature of the room, and she just like it puts it out there. And she was just devastated by this news, trying to understand what death is and where grandpa's going and who's affected. I'm losing my grandpa, that means mama's losing her father, that means you're losing your father-in-law, and this person's losing her brother, and this person's losing, so she was just kind of going through that, trying to really understand that. And when we went over there to say our final goodbyes, when he got moved into hospice care, we were kind of worried. Do we tell the kids? Do we not? How's this going to affect him? Because, our middle child was so big with these emotions of, having almost panic attacks, saying. some concerning language around like I need to kill myself so I can say hi to Grandpa Harold, you know. And she was ready to have the whole family commit mass suicide. You know, it was like, well, sweetie, if you know you're gone, I'm gonna miss you. Well, then you'd have to kill yourself too. You know, well, he's not dead yet, sweetie. You know, oh, that's right. You know, so we were kind of worried about like introducing this level of it. You know, and it was kind of at that point like could happen any day, and we did definitely want to have the kids be there and have it happen. um, but we, you know, brought him over to say their final goodbyes, and he had all of his family over and members from the church and the community, and it was a full house, and everybody was laughing and eating. You know, it seems like a potluck and a family reunion more than anything else. And Aubrey even said, like, why is everybody so happy? Shouldn't everybody be sad? You know, and I think it just goes back to what we're talking about, like, you know, and I tried to explain to her, like, we're only sad because there's something great that is no longer going to be there. And while he is still here, we want to remember all those great things, you know, so that we can think of those things. And like we're saying, it's, man, death is a really hard but beautiful reminder of how fragile all of this is and how silly the days are of getting frustrated over the messy house or the meltdowns, you know, because ultimately it's just the short experience that we have together. So, you know,
Yeah, yeah. And it's so interesting, you know. I mean, as you are some, you know, in a family that has especially two daughters who are, you know, processing that in death in their own ways, you know, you get to really see what that looks like on a spectrum of with kids, you know, kids who are still trying to understand that more. You know, they're not in their teen years, and you know, I think when you get into your teen years, there's a greater understanding of the depth of all of that. But when you're younger, it's still an area that's confusing, and yet, you know, we don't want to underestimate just the ability of our children to try and process that. And sounds like, you know, as an empath, she was going through so much of the experience of loss, and probably, you know, trying to just come up with some sort of thoughts as to what does this look like for me and my life, and the loss that I experienced through the process. Do I have any control? Is there anything I'm responsible for here? And her mind just wanders to the point where the extremes, like, well, this person's gone. This person had so much that they contributed to my life. Now I have no contributions from that person anymore. That seems like you know, something, you know, monumental in their lives. And I think in some ways expressing just how large that seems to be as a loss in their lives is something that's really important for us to, you know, to be there and understand with them, and you know, just let them talk about it. Because even if it's not that big, like she wasn't recognizing why people could be happy in that moment, there's a great, you know, conversation to be had there. And I'm trying to balance that a little bit with Cohen even now. um the examples that I give won't necessarily be just about death, but I do have a couple of death examples too. So his grandfather, on his mom's side, also had a cancer diagnosis and ended up, you know, succumbing to the cancer. And I went and visited when, you know, when Cohen was there, and it wasn't too far before his grandfather passed away. And Cohen was just sitting at the feet of his grandfather as his grandfather sat quietly in this chair. And Cohen just said, you know, Papa, are you going to die? And his grandfather didn't respond, but it was so matter of factly, like, you know, it's just wondering. It almost seemed like, I'm just curious, are you going to die? Because I don't know what that means really, and I just wanted to ask the question. Fast forward to, you know, a couple years down the road, I think it might have been, you know, after we've moved here to Salt Lake City, and we got to talking about different things, and he asked me, you know, about you know, if I was going to die someday, and I said yeah, and he started crying. He says, I can't, you know, you can't die. And he was just so overwhelmed with emotion. And I was really curious. And just this last week, you know, we get these, I mentioned to the audience here a few times, we get these daily reports from his school with a thumbs up, thumbs neutral, or thumbs down. and generally we just get comments about when it's been a thumbs down day. And I couldn't quite understand all of the words that the teacher wrote in the thumbs down day, but I got curious about it, and I know that my son, when I ask him about those days, he says, "I don't know," or "I'm not sure," or "I don't want to talk about that." And that's usually what I get for an answer. Typically speaking, that's all I get. But the reason why I bring that up in this particular conversation is, at one point in that day, I said to him, Cohen, regardless of what your day was looking like, and if you want to talk about it, just know that um, I am I'm here for you, and whatever happened at school. I'm not going to then start to come down on you and give you some sort of like criticisms over your day. I'm just curious to hear your perspective and how things went. Ultimately, I told him this. Ultimately, your mom and I were your safest people, and then the teachers at school are also supposed to be your safest people. And then I gently brought in the message that every kid goes to school, and that's an expectation that that's a safe place for them. So essentially the idea was is you have a lot of people looking out for your safety and your best interest because we care about you. And that got me thinking about that previous conversation about death and his scare, being scared. Or that one time he was shining a laser pointer on the cars driving by down below. And I said, buddy, that's not good. That's illegal. And some people have been, sent to jail for, shining laser pointers and, at planes and stuff. And he goes, would you be sent to jail? And I said, well, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't think so. And he says, and he started crying. You can't go to jail. What would I do? And so that made me think, that's a sign of his trying to process what loss looks like. And even my message to him saying, your mom and I are your safest place. Well, if our kids lose a parent at a young age, like that whole sense of security is now, it's gone, and that's very scary. So what do we do? How do we prepare for that? I don't know if there's ever a real true good answer for preparing for that. I mean, like my kid, he probably has an anxiety disorder of some sort. When it comes to neurodiversity, there's often another diagnosis that can be had, and anxiety is one of those top ones in neurodiversity. So I think about those things, the idea of loss for him, that still feels gigantic, and it feels like that's an impossibility to overcome. So what do? I remind him that I'm in a safe space, and I have to stick to that word, damn it, which I don't always do, which is why I said damn it just now, because I tell him I'm his safest person, and his mom is his safest person. But truth is, sometimes I lose my cool. But ultimately, what I'm trying to say in all this is, we don't know when that time comes, but we do have the opportunity to be the example and the model to our children by trying to be their safest space as often as possible, and giving them the space to really explore those emotions, because that's going to ultimately help rear them into the point where they're going to feel safer about and more confident about moving forward when they do experience those losses.
Yeah. I remember being terrified of death as a kid. I would hyperventilate myself late at night thinking about that anxiety, much like our middle child's. And I remember, having a lot of conversations with my dad, and feeling a lot like Cohen, like, why, being asked, why did you do this? Or what was going on? And me just having the I don't know kind of mentality. And there was safety in that, because, well, first of all, you don't know because you're a kid, and you don't have that verbiage to really kind of like understand the psyche, right? And as I got older, I think that I guess maybe wanted more in those conversations was maybe questions to ask or help probe the I don't knows, you know, because though I didn't have the tools or understanding of why I did it or how or what was going on with me internally or who I maybe was at that moment, maybe I think our kids are still looking for us to lead in some way, of what kind of questions are the questions to ask when we're feeling so overwhelmed by I don't know, you know. So, and I know you're really good at asking good questions, JJ. So, but I wonder
I
what
don't
those
know.
questions are, you know?
Yeah, I mean, well, honestly, like I think speaking of anxiety and fear of the unknown and what comes later, I think sometimes we need to seek out tools and what's available out there. I know I can think of, oh gosh, what is it called? It's like a an anxiety scale test, which we can put some in the show notes, whether it's for preschoolers or adolescents, teenagers, what have you, to help parents not only go through the process of trying to understand their kids by answering these questions, but in some ways helping themselves. I mean, that's one of the big things that I could say. Where does anxiety come from? Well, we could talk about genetics, and we could also talk about environment, and both of those usually include parents. So if we are exhibiting anxiety and fear and sadness and uncertainty and stuff, well, our kids are probably going to be experiencing that as well, and they have yet to really try and package that up and then make a translation of how do I exercise that through the process of going to work or going to school. At the moment, it just feels like a big state of overwhelm. So when our kids are dealing with it, it looks a little different than when adults are dealing with it. Like if I lost a parent, somebody that's really near and dear to my heart, I could probably tell myself, I imagine someday I will, someday in the near future, I will be able to experience the joy of laughter with friends. I'll be able to have, an ability to joke and to enjoy just my everyday. Like I won't go through every single day just saying, I lost this person, and all hope and joy is now gone from my life. So we have that. I think we have that natural tendency to just kind of continue on, but with our kids and even with people who experience greater levels of stress and anxiety and depression, that can take a lot longer time. And what do we do to help support somebody in those moments? A lot of times it just simply looks like, I'm here for you. I'm, I mean, we've talked about this a number of times. Like, I, whatever it is that you have on your mind, I'm here to listen. And then, of course, the worst thing we can do when somebody's experiencing a tragic loss or extreme stress is to say, well, you know what you could do, or in a way to get through it. Or the worst one of all, when you're experiencing losses, um, it'll get better. You're going to get through this, which is true. But I think when somebody's experiencing sadness and they want somebody to be there for them, they're not just wanting somebody to say, yeah, well, you'll get over this. Because that's not expressing the power and the strength that they have within. That's basically telling them right now you're experiencing something that you shouldn't, and in a while you won't anymore. So it's
Yeah.
not really talking to the moment.
Well, I think it's important for us to be really conscious too of this process as an adult and versus how it translates in our kids' experience. Oftentimes, like you say, we have these skills that, though I'm grieving, I still need to function at work and I still need to go do these things and take care of these responsibilities, where our kids don't really understand those switches, those transitions, and those paradigms. So, and we oftentimes just kind of move through the space and I'm grieving, but, have to keep doing these things. And maybe we talk about it less and less. And I think it's really important during this time to be checking in daily with the kids, because though I didn't see much emotion on the neurodivergent experience side of things, there were some nuggets in there. And, I was talking to my therapist about this too. And she said, I would watch out for your oldest, like she's going to have a moment where she's going to process it, or it's going to come out in, a way that maybe you're not expecting. And she just wrote, yeah, her grandma a Mother's Day card, and in it she said, "I'm so sorry that you lost Grandpa Harold, but don't worry, I love you more than him." Which was
Yeah.
just her way of saying, like, I love you, I got you, and our
Right.
love is strong. Um,
And perhaps in there too, she's she hasn't written down the exact reasons as to why she's stating it in that way. But there's memories, there's memories of grandma and there's memories of grandpa in those statements. So she's giving an insight to what she's thinking, maybe not telling the whole story, but she's giving, reassurance and support and comfort as best she knows how. And what's beautiful about that is then you can turn the conversation and onto her and say, yeah, what were some things about grandpa that you really noticed and you really liked, something that made you laugh, something that made you scared. And then what does that do for you? Like, what would you like to, how do you see yourself doing that? What were the influences from this person, in those memories that you could see yourself doing in the world? Like,
Yeah,
sometimes giving the kid the opportunity to be empowered in the moment, through the process of the loss, I think can really help them get through as they're trying to also process emotion in a different level that we do as adults.
yeah, yeah. And again, I see my oldest trying to understand that and to practice that, as we go along and talk about this, where my middle is still in the stage of like, don't mention the word die. You know what it does to me, so she's not even ready to like look at it, which again I feel like is ever more important to help process and ask those questions so it doesn't become an I don't know kind of thing, where she just shoves this emotion down because she doesn't understand it.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's really helpful to be there alongside them and try and understand what level of of I guess severity, maybe we could call it that. Like, what level of severity is this, influencing their lives? Well, not just severity, like how often are they thinking about these, tragedies and death and stuff? How intense is the emotion? Like, maybe it looks like, I don't know what's going to happen to me in a few years. I'm scared all the time that I'm going to die, or I'm scared that, daddy's going to get in the car and not make it to work and die. Who that sounds like that's something that's pretty intense. So it's a good opportunity to have a conversation, maybe again, like go through the scale test of that. I mentioned the severity and you know I guess one of the big ones too is, what does that look like over time? So
Hmm.
do we have this conversation? Does this conversation kind of lessen over time with them? Do they keep it at the front of their minds? Do we need to talk like more seriously about getting them maybe the possible therapy help if we as parents see this as a thing that's ongoing? um so keeping that conversation alive, but also letting the children kind of drive at it a little bit so we can understand just just how severe, just how much it is really kind of affecting their day to day. I think that's really, really helpful. And then the advantage of that, for doing that for everybody, the kids and us included, is that we know what level of support they're going to need as they grow and how they process emotion. And what are we looking at? Are we looking at something where we need to have an intervention of diagnosis with the therapist, or are we just still trying to just be there as regular parents to support? And yeah, you have an empath and you have a neurodiverse kid there who are giving you two different stories and two different ways of processing death. And they're already keeping that conversation going in I'd say, a relatively healthy manner as a family. And then just kind of navigating through the process of continuing that conversation over time gives us a better understanding of what are we looking at to support our kids and ourselves as in the months and years continue.
Well, we definitely got some good one-on-one time in during this process. Both my wife and I are work from home, so we can take time and work from different remote locations, as this is going on. So she went to go stay with her mom and help with the end of life stuff, which was really a blessing to my mother-in-law, but left me with the kids for 3 weeks. So, it was complete chaos, but we had a lot of good movie nights and cooking and eating junk food and making forts and having sleepovers, so I feel like I really got some good time in with them despite all of the 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 drama and stuff that was going on, which I think is, still possible while all this stuff is going on, to still create some stuff, so but it was hard on everybody. We're still grieving, and he just passed away last Tuesday, so it hasn't even been a week here yet. So mother-in-law's coming to move in with us for a while, so life's going to change in big ways, and we'll find routines around that. But I'm honestly just blessed to have the family that we have in going through this. And it was a beautiful experience to see all the people gathered around him. And honestly, I hope that in my end of days, I can have as many people filled in my house and hear as much laughter as he did towards the end of days. Because as fast and as tragic as it is, that was beautiful. Sorry, I'm getting a little choked up again here thinking
I
about
mean,
it, but
really makes sense. I think we get choked up, around these times because we do remember all the reasons why we were so grateful for that life. Share with you, my grandmother was one of the. I always say like the top three people in my life. Honestly, I don't have a list. I'm not like, all right, at number 20 is. I don't do that. But yeah, my grandmother was just such an important part of my life. I would call her, when I was living in Texas, I'd call her at least once a week, spend an hour or more on the phone with her. And she always said, I would call you, but I just know you're so busy. And I told her, I said, Grandma, you can call. And if I'm busy, then it'll go to voicemail. And you can leave me a voicemail, which would make me happy. But she always stuck to the idea like, oh, I know you're busy. But she was so sweet, always thinking of me. There was a time when I was young where my favorite pie, which I wasn't into pies really, but my favorite pie was coconut cream pie. And she came, she came to the house, to visit. This is when I was living with my parents, and I had a little Bichon dog, um, and she brings this pie in, got this big meringue on the top of it, and I was just kind of floored. My grandma just at a random time decides to bring this coconut cream pie, and we walk her out to the car to say goodbye, and I come back in, and the dang dog jumped up on the table and had his face right through that meringue, and stupid dog, but I loved that dog. I miss that dog. Just like well, not just like I miss my grandma, but I miss my grandma so dearly. And I wish I could have heard her voice, on a voicemail, could have kept that, but that just didn't happen. So I have the memory of her voice in my head now, but it's also, it's also cherished still. I miss her so much. And, when we had her funeral, my dad, he wasn't capable of being up in front of the entire church to speak the letter. So I read his letter that he had written about his mom in the service, and that was really touching for me. I felt very honored. And in addition to that, my dad has made a good impact on the people around him in the community, and he's been on the fire department for so long that he's made a lot of great friendships. And a bunch of the firefighters from my hometown went to the cemetery and stood in a line to pay their respects to my grandma and to my dad, at the same time. My dad afterwards just went up and shook all their hands, and then I was the first person to I felt I needed to do this. I went up to my dad and just like gave him a huge hug and just started crying. And he said, "Yeah, Grandma, she was an amazing woman," and I said she was the best. And it was really hard. But the truth is the reason why it was so hard is because there's just so much good, so much. Like if I can say she's in my top three of all time, like there's just so much influence and legacy that she left on the family. Just there's so much impression on my life that she created. And to be able to like see the people there was a reminder, like, yeah, it went beyond just my relationship with her. She didn't share just her special soul with just me. She shared it with a lot of people. And wow, if those people got even a hundredth of what I got, they were extremely blessed by that. So yeah, I think about just the amazing impact that we can have on people. And even if I die and I only have a few people show up at my funeral, I would imagine that those people did see the best sides of me, and I can be grateful that I did allow the best sides of me to be shared with the people I love. Um, so the celebration of life, ultimately at the end of life, is something that we don't want to get to, but we know we can get to, and that's why living today and experiencing that love and those memories that we can create now, they'll bring us to that those laughter moments and those tears in the end when we're celebrating. And I don't know, beyond that, I think that's the thing that I want to kind of continue to remind my son about, is that, going back to the idea of quality time. And, well, hell, let's just talk about leave from work, vacation. I'm spending a good chunk of money because I'm insane and we're going to go to Disney again here in October. But I say this, I say, you know what, I can create memories here at home, and I also know we can create amazing memories while at Disney here in October. And I don't want to look at it as a drain on my bank account. I want to look at it as constant deposits into the life account that I have with my son. So man, yeah, whether it's my little dog who ate through my damn pie, and all the great memories that I could laugh at and just be appreciative of my first dog that actually saw me through my adolescent years, through my teenager years, through college, and even into my first career. Like my dog saw, I got to like raise a dog through all that meant so much to me, and it was so hard to see him go. But there was just the only reason why it was so hard to see him go is because there was just so much good that we stacked up together. And then my grandma, of course, by comparison, is just leagues beyond. She's up there in the stars, in the great galaxy of wonderful in my world. And if I can be that sad about and celebrating at the same time about losing my dog, then man, just imagine how much great great love and experience that I got from my grandma meant. So I get to carry that with me every day.
Yeah, when my grandma passed, I was so ill equipped to think about death or handle death. I was 27, 28, and when she passed, she got dementia real bad and couldn't remember up from down. And, you know, um, when I went to go see her the last time, she was in and out of knowing who I was or what year it was. She thought I was going to the prom, and my grandma loved Tom Clancy novels. She read all of these spy thrillers, and when she got old, that is like what took over her brain. She just got like paranoid. She thought that, CIA was onto her, and JFK assassinations and this and that. She was just in like these crazy conspiracy theories of spy novels and Tom Clancy writings. So it was kind of wild to see, and I remember feeling really scared, and when I was sitting with her, I just wanted to get out of that home and leave as quickly as possible. And then as soon as I did, I remember feeling so much shame and guilt that I just wanted to run from that, and how I didn't want to show up for my grandma. I just wanted to leave, and I think again, it's important for us to maybe think about this stuff before it happens and we feel so blindsided, because though it feels scary and intimidating, like there can be some really like cathartic and resolute moments to like our relationships, our trauma, our communication, our personalities, you know, and yeah, just interesting to see, from that perspective versus experiencing it now, and how my wife handled it, and how his family handled it, and how everybody grieves in their different ways and are affected by it. It's just a crazy thing, and I worry about myself too, like God, from a years of long of drug use and smoking cigarettes and pot, from my life, and what that has done to my body. And this all started with my father-in-law. He fell off of a ladder, and we went on to a family vacation to go visit my brother-in-law's new kid, and he fell off of a ladder, helping him in the attic, didn't tell any of us. Went back to work 2 weeks later, was driving his truck and sneezed, and he said something exploded in his back. And he went in and they said, "Yeah, you got something on there. We got to go in there," and took some MRIs and said, "Oh, your levels don't look good." And, what's this thing on your back? They went in to do this back surgery, but then had to remove this cyst, found other cysts. And in a matter of him falling off that ladder to 6 weeks later, he was dead. I mean, it was that fragile of a thing, and we again had planned all this stuff to go to Hawaii together and had all these plans. And man, if he had not fallen off the ladder, would the cancer still have killed him in 6 weeks? And we would not have known, like go get it checked out, go get the screenings, go find it out. Stage 1, not stage 4, and it's just
Yeah.
fragile, brother. It can all be taken away. And I got my uncle right now who's battling leukemia too, and my grandma on the East Coast who is also going through her end of life transition right now, and has sundown syndrome, where she doesn't know daytime from nighttime. Her brain is so confused that she does not know light from dark. And that, like, to be that confused towards the end of life, you know it's just
Mm.
sad and scary.
Yeah. I tell this often now, probably because, we'll talk about the midlife thing. I'm not necessarily saying it's crisis, but it is funny. When you're young, or at least, for a lot of us, when we're young or like we're teenagers or something, we have to fill out forms at the doctor. Like, do you have a family history of this? Nope, nope, nope. Hey, everything's a nope. That's cool. And then you get a little older, like, oh, yep, or yeah, that uncle had cancer. Yep. Oh, that one died of a heart
This
attack.
one died of
Yep,
this. That's
yep.
one my dad's got a pacemaker now. All right, yeah, he did have that. Yeah,
Yeah, where's the
diagnosed with
select all
this.
option here? And then, now, I mean, I had my shoulder issue when I was, getting in the best shape of my life, and it wasn't healing up fast. And I'm like, well, that's some BS. And then finally they ordered x-rays. Oh yeah, you have arthritis. I'm like, all right, well, yeah, I guess this is just the way things are, and then I had something happen recently with, could have been my kidneys. They test only so much and stuff. The I guess the lab person called me up and they said, yeah, we found white blood cells in your urine. Do you have a history of kidney stones? And I said, no, and I don't want to start having a history of kidney stones. But it's like, yeah, when you get older, your body just starts to say, all right, things they're not gonna work so perfect anymore, and you got to take care of me. And we don't know what it's going to look like at the end of life. But you said something earlier about being afraid and, scared, and, maybe even feeling a little, I don't know if ashamed is the right way to put it, of how you had to respond to the death and the fear of that. But I kind of want to go back to the idea of living life today and being grateful, and putting in those emotional love deposits with our loved ones, because I think about the people that have gone before us, and they're probably thinking, oh, you were afraid in that moment that I passed, and, it was tough for you. I understand that, as I understand you. Or you stayed and it was really hard for you. I understand that. You celebrated and you laughed. That's awesome. I'm grateful that you did that. That's probably what they would say to us. And our kids, who are experiencing all sorts of things and we're trying to be there for them, they probably want to experience that same, full range of emotions, and understanding why their heroes in front of them, who are leading them through life, think the way they do and respond the way they do, and can stand up or sit down or hide because they're scared. They want to witness all of that, or they would probably prefer witnessing all of that, because they want to know what it looks like to really truly fully live. So yeah, living for today, because tomorrow we might not know when the sun is up or when the moon is up. That's, it's not because we're living out of fear, it's because we want to take advantage of the wonderful things that we have around us. I remember, again, going back to like the simple thing of having a pet. I had a friend who lost their dog, and she said, I don't think I could go through this again. And I didn't want to say, well, that's the wrong way to look at it. That definitely wasn't my thing. But what I tried to say out of comfort was, what I hear there is that this life was so precious to you and there was so much good that it was so much harder at the end to say goodbye to that. But I'd rather, of course, so this is what I didn't say, I'd rather be able to come to the end of life and say, oh, all those great things that we had, I'm going to miss that. But you had them, and I could celebrate that. I'd rather have a dad who's there for me and cares for me and loves me and can comfort me. Um, and I hope I can do that for my kiddo, till a long time from now. But
Yeah.
I don't want to just hope for the long term. I want to create the good in the immediate.
Yeah, and I guess that's the lesson that I guess I'm trying to put forth in this episode. If there's anything to take from this somber episode that we got into about death today, it's this the fragility of it, and like the presence that's needed to be like in this moment right now, and how precious this moment is. Because the vacation that you booked 6 weeks from now, we may not get to. It's like today, this decision right now, like how can we like maximize every bit of the squeeze from it, and like we got to take care of ourselves, and I'm hypocritical to talk about this over the last 3 weeks because I haven't been able to get up and go to the gym like I was. I probably gained about 10 pounds, eating all this pizza and takeout that I've been trying to survive on for the last 3 weeks, but I this experience really has taught me like we need to we need to put time forth to take care of the temple, And I heard something, in a podcast that said, every man is willing to die for the kids. You hear everybody say, I would die for my kids. I'd take a bullet for them. But are you willing to live for them? Are you willing to wake up at 6 a.m. every day to make sure that your heart is good at the gym, to do some cardiovascular work? Are you willing to put down the cupcake and pick up the apple, instead, and live for them, right? And I think that like I'm really gonna try to practice that mentality, in my decisions every day, because I do want to be here for a very long time with these kids, and I want to see grandkids and maybe even great grandkids, and there's a lot of life that I want to be around for and that I want to be able to enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, we think of the hero as making the big statement, the big life-saving moment and stuff. But the truth is that hero had to get up every day, hopefully. Get up every day and put in the work to be there, for the emotional support and for their own strength and health and well-being, to be able to get to the point of the headline making, heroic moments. It's I think I've seen it maybe joked on the the Onion in some sorts, like dad gets up today and eats an apple, and so we were like, oh man, he's amazing, he's a hero. But yeah, the truth is the daily everyday thing that you get into to keep yourself healthy and aware and to your best health through the majority of your days. That's what's going to create those lasting memories, those powerful moments that our children and our loved ones remember us for. And again, like back to neurodiverse kids and kind of processing that, it might take a little bit more time, or they might tell us the story of a memory in their way, but it gets to the idea of what that connection looks like for them and why it was important. So giving over our story to them in the way that they see best to translate and put it out there later on as to how it impacted them, like that's something. And that happens daily. That doesn't happen just in the big moments. I know my kiddo is really stuck on a lot of materialistic things right now. Like he's always talking about the next thing he wants, the next toy he wants. But the truth is like the emotion that really comes out of him comes from our connection. That's what really matters. And I am such a hypocrite sometimes, and I'm not trying to be shameful and make myself out to be somebody worse than I truly am. But I think about the times where we go home and I tell him, yeah, homework time, and he gets really upset. And I have a choice in that moment. I can either support and affirm and validate. Support doesn't look like, all right, no homework tonight. But, just being there to understand why he's feeling the frustrations. That's what's really mattering to him now. And that's what the hero looks like. I'll never forget that moment where we came home and he was just he must have had a day that was tough and he couldn't really express it, but he expressed it in his frustration and stress and anger when I and sadness when I told him that we had to get to our homework still, and he started crying and he slammed his hands down. I know I've said this story on the podcast before, but I just let him get it out there, and then I just picked him up and put him in my arms, and he said, "I love you," with through tears. "I love you," and I realized, okay, that's what's showing up. That's what being the hero looks like. Doesn't mean you fit. You doesn't mean you give in. It doesn't mean you fix everything. It means you're there.
Yeah, I was literally just having this thought the other day as Caden was following me around all day, telling me about all the cars that he wanted, And I think it was a run on sentence that started from 7 in the morning to, 9 at night when he went to bed about Coco, can you get this car for me? Because I saw it on this show and it had this car remote and it did this and it had a green top and wheels that were this. And, he just detailed everything and repetitively over and over and over again. And I really wanted to and put my head through the car window. But I thought about this time when I was a kid, and I was like really into Zelda. And I was just like doing the same thing with my dad, following him around all day. Like, and then there's this fairy and then there's the sword, and then you got to go to this underground water temple, and then you got to go to this desert temple, and then there's this fish that eats you, and like I was just like into it, telling him all about it, and he was just like so dismissive and shut up, And my dad was really into Lord of the Rings. Didn't read much, but he loved the Tolkien books, And that was like the first book I ever read cover to cover, like as like a 8, 9 year old. I didn't understand the lick of it, all these made up words and Elvish language, But I was like, my dad loves this. I'm gonna read it, And that was like our thing. I thought that was our thing. My dad loves fantasy stuff. He loves elves and stuff. So when the Ocarina of Time Zelda came out, I was just like, this is how I'm going to connect to him, And it was so heartbreaking when he was just like, shut up, And that mind flashed in my head as Caden was following me around all day with the cars, and I just had to turn it around to like what you're saying, like how lucky am I to be this person that he wants to share this with. He's so excited about these friggin' cars and he wants to share it with me, you know? And how great is that he feels so safe and comfortable and that we're best friends, that he can just talk all day about this freaking car, and we can have the best, at least he's having the best time, and I can have the best time too if I really take the moment to appreciate what's happening here and not my own feelings of how I want to get through it or whatever for myself.
I love that. That just makes me think of my relationship with my kiddo. And sometimes I'm looking in the moment, just maybe impatient and just not wanting to experience what it is that he wants to experience or share with me. Um, you know how kids they watch something and they know they like it, so they just want to watch that again as opposed to like continuing to explore what else is out there. Yeah, Cohen gets caught up in certain videos of like kaiju monsters and stuff, and he'll watch the same ones on YouTube. And
Oh, I
it's
love
just
it.
it's just
I'll watch
basically,
kaiju monsters with them.
but it's just like it's just like a monster standing there, and then the words of the what it is, and it'll be there for like 5 seconds or 10 seconds, and then it'll move on to the next one. There's no action. It's just like you get to see them, and maybe they roar or something, but that's about it. And he'll say, "Dad, check this one out. Which one's this one?" I'm like, well, it's still that, it's still the big giant spider or whatever, same as it was 20 times ago. Um, and then he was watching The Incredibles, and there's this, this big ball robot that learns its enemies' abilities to eventually defeat them. And it's a cool idea. I really dig it. But after seeing it so many times, it starts to lose its value in your head. You want to kind of move on to something that seems fresh as an adult. But he was just studying it and studying it, and he would ask questions and he would talk about it. Well, today he's doing what they call kid co-oping. He's teaching kids in his class what to do. What is he teaching them to do? To draw the Omnidroid from The Incredibles. So he's been studying this thing and he's been drawing this thing because he is prepared to teach and to share. And that is an amazing thing. So all those little moments where he's just talking about what I think is the same repetitive thing, he's preparing himself for something greater. And I did not at times even give myself the luxury of thinking beyond the simple I'm a viewer and I'm consuming the same thing. He was like, no,
Yeah.
I'm now creating something from this and I'm sharing it with the world. So much more brilliant than sometimes we give our kids credit for. So, like you with Legend of Zelda is a great example of just world expansion. Kids get to see so much of the world within a game and explore. And what can you do? Maybe you go outside and you go into a fantasy world in your head and you create these things. Like, what was it? Bridge to Terabithia is a great example of these kids who, they went out into the woods and they created this larger than life fantasy world for themselves. And that's what all they needed. And they started from something small
Don't
and
tell
made
me
something
about
big.
Bridget Terabithia. That
Yeah.
book and that movie made me cry so hard,
Yes.
JJ.
Yeah, and speaking of loss and tragedy, and trying to go through that, it's a real thing. And I know I didn't intend to make that kind of come back full circle, but it
So
gives our
sad.
kids like through the process of their thinking and connecting with us, it gives them the opportunity to really value the things in their life, whether they're small or big, to make
Yes, totally.
make sense of daily life, make sense of connection. And
Yeah.
so Caden was doing that. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I just got excited because that I've been homeschooling Caden now for the last half of the year because we took him out of the place that was like 4 hours of travel a day. So I've been homeschooling him and been having a really hard time with his numbers and his letters. He just doesn't want to be motivated for it. As soon as it's like, oh, you know. But we walked to go get his sisters to go pick them up, and as we're walking through the parking lot, Coco, what kind of car is that? A Toyota what? Coco, a Nissan what? That's a BMW. What about that? Is that a Nissan? He can remember all the different brands of cars and the makes and models as we're going through the parking lot. He's doing great with his retention and memory, like it's just we got to find something that interests him, and through that we can be, yes, Toyota's a T, right? We're not doing alphabet linear, but we're trying to connect these dots, and he's remembering and he's curious about these things. So like, why not use what he's excited about to like get him excited about learning?
That is so funny. And I know it's a little bit of a departure from, talking about death and anxiety. And I think we're gonna explore anxiety with our kids and how we can, help support them in a future episode. But you know, uh, I had the opportunity to sit down with one of the great dad friends that I know, and he we talked about Cohen because Cohen was there. It was just me and these dads, and Cohen was with me. So they got to see him, and he was full of energy and bouncing around, being his wild happy self. And so we started talking about ADHD, and one of my friends there sitting, he said, when I was young, I got kind of in trouble with the teachers, and they talked to my parents saying, yeah, he's always drawing. He's not focusing in on his homework and stuff. He's getting distracted and doing all this drawing and stuff and doodling. And well, he actually is like a designer today, and he uses his designing creative abilities to be successful in what he does. So I think about that and I'm like, oh, so the teacher could have said, yeah, he's not doing that stuff, but he's preparing for his future and I see great things
Yeah.
coming. Instead, it was like he's just not doing the things he's supposed to do. And so, yeah, you tap into that positive thing that your kiddo is sharing with you. And man, I mean, let's let them succeed in that. There's so much great opportunity. And two, like, wow, we're paying attention, we're making that connection, we're doing that time that we have together to create great memories, to build that bond. We're kind of knocking a bunch of things out all at once in that process. So
He may not be able to count to 20 with the rest of the kids in pre-K, but he will be able to name all 35 car brands and the makes and models that they produced for the last 3 years. I'll tell you what.
yeah, and does everything need to be exactly in line with all the other kids? I know we have standardized testing and stuff, but the truth is standardized testing should be a measurement of trying to find where you're going to go in life or where you'd like to go. rather than just trying to, determine who gets in, who doesn't. And I know it's not as simple as that, but honestly, like, yeah, back to the idea of valuing life and valuing today. Well, that's going to mean we're not going to all look the same, people, and it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, brother, for the talk today, and apologies to our, 12 listeners for taking the last few weeks off as I show up for the family here. But let's keep the ball rolling, brother, and I'm excited about the conversations we have planned for the next few weeks. So, thank you guys for listening. Make sure to drop us a review. That's the best way to support this show, really help us get off the ground here. We love hearing from you guys. So thanks again. Until next time, I'm your host, CJ,
I'm JJ.
and this has been the ADH Dads.